Welcome to the Shintaido of America podcast. Shintaido is an amazing form of health exercise and body movement practice inspired by martial arts, a non-combative training system for mind and body invented by Japanese martial artists in the 1960s. Shintaido can be a way to open up to a deeper connection with ourselves, with our community, and with nature. In Season 1 of the podcast, I'll be reading from the book Shintaido, The Body is a Message of the Universe, by the founder of Shintaido, Hiroyuki Aoki. But before I jump into that, I have a favor to ask. Shintaido of America produces this podcast and other educational materials on a shoestring budget. There are many things you can do to help, and the most important one is that if you like this podcast, tell people about us. Share it on your social media and give us a good rating on whatever platform you're using to listen to this. I'll remind you again at the end of the episode. You can find links to this podcast, sign up for our email newsletter, and find many other resources at our website, www.shintaido.org. That's www.shintaido.org. Hi, welcome to Episode 1 of the Shintaido of America podcast. I'm Shintaido instructor David Franklin. Hiroyuki Aoki, the founder of Shintaido, has been called a pioneer, and the discipline he created with the Rakutenkai group in the 1960s has been called an avant-garde martial art. As children, Aoki and members of the group experienced the bombing of Japan during World War II, and many lost family members to the atomic bomb. But even as the technology of war continued to increase its destructive power, these young people dove deep into the traditional fighting techniques of Japanese martial arts to transform the essence of these ancient teachings into a movement discipline suitable for today's society. Our podcast today will be like an audiobook. I'll be reading from the book Shintaido, The Body is a Message of the Universe, by the founder of Shintaido, Hiroyuki Aoki. Today's episode is in 4 short segments. First, we'll introduce the author. Then, Master Shintaido instructors Michael Thompson and Haruyoshi Ito will also offer their perspectives in the introduction and translator's note, while the last essay was written by the young Aoki before Shintaido even existed, when he was leading a university karate club. Okay, ready? Here we go. Shintaido, The Body is a Message of the Universe, by Hiroyuki Aoki. Read by David Franklin. About the author and this book. Mr. Hiroyuki Aoki, the author of this book, is the founder of Shintaido. He holds the title of Master in the Nippon Karate-Do Shotokai Association and is co-author with Master Shigeru Egami of the Japanese book of karate forms entitled Karate-Do Kata for Professionals. Mr. Aoki began his study of karate when he entered Chuo University in Tokyo. He was captain of the Chuo University Karate Club during his 3rd and 4th years and became a student under Master Shigeru Egami. Upon graduation, he accepted a position as lecturer at the university's physical education department for 1 year. For the next 7 years, he served as acting master for Master Egami at the Karate Hall in Tokyo. In 1966, Mr. Aoki established Rakutenkai, a non-profit educational organization for the study of the Bible, fine arts, tea ceremony, and martial arts. As part of Rakutenkai, he brought together about 30 expert martial arts instructors, and a period of intensive research and practice continued over 3 years. Their studies included Bojutsu, long staff, Jojutsu, short staff, and Kendo, sword movement. Out of a synthesis of these martial arts, Shintaido was born. Mr. Aoki was the head instructor of Sogo Budo Renmei, the Holistic Martial Arts Federation, and was then director of the International Shintaido Federation in Tokyo. The Japanese publication of this book was completed in 1976. In this English edition, We have made every effort to remain faithful to the Japanese text and to convey its meaning and spirit to our English readers. We welcome you to this text and to the exciting world of exploration and self-development which makes up Shintaido, a new art of movement and life expression. Shintaido of America. Introduction. I am pleased to introduce this Shintaido textbook by Mr. Hiroyuki Aoki to English-speaking readers. As I write, I cannot help wondering who these readers might be, now, in 10 years, or in 100 years. Presently, in 1981, Shintaido is virtually unknown outside of Japan and hardly a household word inside Japan itself. The small groups of American, English, French, or Mexican practitioners often find themselves at a loss to explain what they are doing to themselves as well as others. I think they will find this textbook and the Aoki story very useful. I am not sure the word pioneer continues to have meaning in our civilized world. We speak of pioneers in space, pioneers in art, and even pioneers in advertising. One dictionary defines the pioneer as one who goes before to prepare the way for others. To that definition, I would add that a pioneer is also one who defies commonly held beliefs in order to open new frontiers. We have many examples in human history of this type of pioneer: John the Baptist, Jesus, Buddha, Vincent van Gogh, and Henry Miller, just to name some of the more notable. I hope that those who are practicing Shintaido today will come to see themselves in this light and that this book will help lead them to a new understanding of their practice. I also hope that those who read this in the future will appreciate the work and dedication of the few who sought to prepare the way. I first met Mr. Aoki in Paris in 1972 at a time when I had been practicing Shintaido for about 6 months and had little idea about the role of martial arts in Japan, nor had any particular purpose in studying beyond a vague desire to get in shape and acquire a modicum of self-confidence. During the 8 or so years I have been associated with him, I have had ample opportunity to observe and appreciate his genius. Master is another word we now use somewhat casually, but there is no doubt in my mind that Mr. Aoki is a master. His mode of expression is the human body. He can reach the core of a person's being with an imperceptible movement of the hand, or, observing another person's movement, provide an uncanny portrait of his or her character and condition. His main gift, however, is the system of Shintaido itself, which he presents in this book. Where does the body end and the mind or spirit begin? How can a man whose expertise lies in the field of body movement come so directly and naturally into areas which in the West we have traditionally reserved for our priests and philosophers, or more recently for our physicians and psychiatrists? He can do this because he is a specialist of that invisible and yet very physical part of ourselves which our doctors have not yet discovered. His treatment is to teach us to communicate with our deeper selves, with each other, with nature, and with God through the medium of our bodies. He is a master, not a master craftsman or artist, although he may be these too, but a master of humanity. As such, he teaches the same message of all true masters: love, faith, compassion, and humility. Perhaps one difference between a master and a shaman is that, while both may possess seemingly superhuman or extraordinarily human powers, the master lives to show us the truth which will set us free. The truth has always been the same, but we persist in erecting complex barriers between it and ourselves. Some call those barriers Maya, others sin, but most agree that they are manifestations of our egocentric rational selves. Another criteria of a master, I believe, is the ability to relate and respond to the world that is, and not as it once was or should be. We are destined to be civilized and urban. That is our lot. Mr. Aoki, who lives with his wife and 4 children in Yokohama — it is hard to imagine a more painfully urban setting — understood that the main task we must undertake is to rediscover our natural essence while making our way in the everyday world of work, compromise, and corruption. The system he presents here, although its roots lie deep in the Japanese soil, is designed to meet the needs of men and women living in the real world, a world which cannot be allowed to continue in the direction it is heading. As I wrote, there may be many great teachers in the world, but I know of none who have so carefully considered the relationship between what must be learned and the actual human condition. Sometimes Shintaido seems very peaceful, and at other times quite violent or extreme. This is because both qualities, when they are based on love and compassion, are needed in today's society. Shintaido contains elements of the martial arts which appear violent, and meditation which is quite calm and peaceful. They are not any more mutually exclusive than the two hemispheres of our brain. Living in the latter half of the 20th century, we do not have to be told of the devastating effects of instinctual repression on the one hand and uncontrolled instinctual release on the other. In creating this system, Mr. Aoki has rejected none of the conditions and expressions which mark us as human beings. In Shintaido, he has attempted to redeem and harmonize all the poles and extremities of the human spirit. He is, in this sense, a thoroughly modern master. Perhaps you will find it difficult to believe that the techniques and exercises described in this book can ever lead you into the areas or dimensions I have been discussing, but please try anyway. You never know. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the contributions made by Mr. Haruyoshi Fugaku Ito, Shintaido's chief pioneer in the United States. He has devoted himself for the last 7 years to the establishment of Shintaido in the United States. The publication of this book in English has been accomplished by his unswerving effort. Without him, there would be no seeds of the Shintaido movement in America and no English version of this text. Michael Thompson, Tokyo, January 1982. Translator's Note. During my first visit to the United States 10 years ago, I saw the Thomas Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., and read the following words inscribed there. I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws or constitutions, but laws must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. With the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. These words reminded me of the code of Master Koizumi, founder of the Shinkage-ryu school in the early 16th century, one of the great figures in the history of Japanese martial arts, who said, "Martial arts must change with the demands of each age, otherwise they are of no use to the warrior." Just as Jefferson's code can be adopted as a slogan for radical, revolutionary movements, though it was originally intended as a guideline to a vision of popular democracy, Master Koizumi's code has also been adopted by opposing aspects of the Japanese martial arts, the technological and the spiritual. The technological aspect, which began its modern development with the innovations of the Oda Nobunaga clan during the Civil War period in Japan, 14th to 16th centuries, has been inordinately successful during the last 400 years, to the point of threatening the life of the planet with nuclear weapons and Star Wars technology. On the other hand, even though it was possible for a practitioner to aspire to the highest level of spiritual training available in his particular age, the overall historical development of the spiritual aspects of the martial arts lagged far behind these technological advances. After World War II, the martial arts were particularly vulnerable to the corruption of commercialism through the mass media. The more Japanese martial arts were popularized throughout the world, the more superficial became the understanding of the true spirit of Budo, even by the Japanese themselves. Fortunately, however, it was destined that certain martial artists in Japan would recover the true balance of the martial arts. During the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, after Anton Giesenig, a member of the Dutch judo team, defeated the Japanese and became champion, the Japanese were stunned. They felt the honor of Japanese Budo had been tarnished by a modern martial arts system in which technique and spirit had been subverted by size and power. We were not, of course, angry with Anton Giesenig. In our defeat, we found a new aspiration. Those of us who were practicing under Mr. Aoki vowed to restore the Japanese martial arts. Each of us wrote a will to our family and left home. We put our life in his hands with the understanding that our talent would be used to develop a martial art for our new age, even if it meant giving up our life. The story of the long struggle that followed, and which eventually led to the discovery of Eiko no Ken, is described in Chapter 3. Until this age, I think most great philosophers and religious leaders have traditionally denied the violence which is an integral part of our being. In place of a real solution to the question of violence, they have given us ideals or morals, even though they know those with great potential will naturally also have a greater capacity for violence. The more violence is turned into a form of spiritual garbage through misunderstanding and suppression, the more virulent is its odor when the cap blows off and it is finally released. I personally believe Mr. Aoki is the first man to break through this barrier and, acting in the spirit of Jesus Christ, he has given us a positive kata, a way, to accept and assimilate this violent energy. It is a truly great moment for us as we make this textbook available in English. In the action part of this text, we have shown only the great foundational techniques of Shintaido. Traditionally, such foundational techniques have been kept a closely guarded secret. From these fundamentals, however, spring the principles for a new system that today encompasses almost every aspect of the Japanese martial arts, as well as aspects of fine arts and esoteric arts. My own participation in the development of the Shintaido program over the past 20 years has included the study of Kenjutsu, sword technique, Bojutsu, long staff technique, Jojutsu, short staff technique, Jujutsu, karate, performance, physical therapy, esoteric training, disciplines, and much more. I hope that in the future we can publish more information about these various areas of Shintaido and eventually compile a general encyclopedia of all Shintaido. A few words about this translation. I worked with Michael Thompson over a 5-year period translating from the original Japanese text. We started with reading sessions for the San Francisco group in which I translated and Michael took notes. I take full responsibility for any parts which are difficult to understand or mistranslated. This is a result of my limited English, and is neither due to Mr. Aoki's original text nor to Michael's attempts to translate from my Japanese English. Since Shintaido is a body movement, if parts of the translation are hard to understand, please support your imagination and understanding through actual experience. I would like to thank some of the many people who made this translation possible. A special thanks to Masatake Egami and Kenneth Waite, who volunteered to demonstrate the movements. Also, I would like to thank Kazuyanagi for the photography and all of the efforts of Shintaido of America in raising funds, editing, publishing, and for their future efforts in distribution. And finally, I would like to thank the International Shintaido Federation headquarters in Tokyo for giving us the great honor of publishing this English version and for providing us with information, pictures, and support. A final note, the original textbook was published in 1976 in Japan. Some parts have necessarily been arranged according to the demands of our age. Haruyoshi Fugaku Ito, San Francisco, March 1982. Life, Burn. This article was originally written for the junior members of the Chuo University Karate Club shortly after the author graduated. It marks the beginnings of the creative process which led to Shintaido. Part 1. To express something invisible which exists absolutely, without flowing with the passage of time, nor being invaded by the changes of the world through kata, forms, which should be developed and reformed as time goes on. This is a mission or a destiny with which every art is charged. Its mission is not to create something new or to build up a plausible system by replacing what has been handed down from generation to generation, but to catch sight of something which has always existed somewhere from earliest times without ever being seen by our two eyes, and to express this something with our own body. Its mission is to express through the body's forms or movements some sort of perceived world which visits us with time, while satisfying the limited conditions special to Budo, or martial arts. We can say that this is actually the pursuit of human life, nothing less than the pursuit of truth. We call the art avant-garde, which takes these as its goals. To every young person who will follow the path of Budo in order to fulfill this cruel and at the same time blessed duty, I can't help crying, "Be a person of true avant-garde Budo." What we have to establish should be a Budo of new and unknown technique, forms, or expressions, which must add much more light to the world of Budo rather than extinguishing its flame. In a strict sense, it is, therefore, not a creation but an embodiment of secretly hidden cosmic breath. Part 2. In order to break new ground and create a much better Budo, we have to overcome many, many obstacles. A time may come when we have to discard all that we have mastered, or when we will be repudiated even by our friends. The tradition of our club, which is a stepping stone our predecessors have made for us, may become completely useless. More than that, who can deny that we may have to fight with that tradition in the future? More dangerous for us are the fixed ideas and the temptations within ourselves which would make us look back. But stick to it. Study, devise, and practice with unremitting efforts. Young people, tomorrow is for you. The world of the soul is much larger than any exercise hall or any organization. It is boundless. If we depended only on decaying tradition without seeking after the center from which springs our fountain of life, our predecessors' words, "Karate is still immature, who in the world will complete it?" would vanish unanswered. Part 3. I wish that our brilliant future karate might not occupy merely a part of the world, but that, as an infinitely expanding cosmos, it might contain the whole world in it. It is uncertain that the term karate will still be used at such a time. Karate would then be no longer Budo as a means of expression, but an art concerned with the problem of being. I am now extremely anxious to express with my body what I have secretly felt, that is, what is thought nearly impossible to express with the body, while asking for a reverberating encounter with an ever unperceived realm. Hiroyuki Aoki. You've been listening to Episode 1 of the Shintaido of America podcast, a reading from the book Shintaido, The Body is a Message of the Universe, by Hiroyuki Aoki. If you enjoyed today's podcast, the most important thing you can do to help is to tell people about us. Share the podcast on your social media and give us a good rating on whatever platform you're using to listen to this. Shintaido of America is a member-supported non-profit organization, and there are many ways to support our truly micro-budget production of educational materials, and I really mean that. We produce a huge amount of content on volunteer power, but some things just require a few bucks in the bank. So make a donation or become a member of Shintaido of America. You can do that and also find all kinds of educational resources at our website, www.shintaido.org. That's whiskey.Sierra Hotel India November Tango Alpha India Delta Oscar Oscar Romeo Golf. You can also find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube by searching for Shintaido of America. Our episode today was recorded and edited by me, David Franklin, with support from Sarah Baker, Connie Borden, Teresa Soldatova, Jim Sterling, the Joe Zawilski Memorial Fund, and of course, the members of Shintaido of America. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Shintaido of America podcast. I'm Shintaido instructor David Franklin. Contents of this podcast copyright Shintaido of America 2022. Shintaido, Opening to Life.